Hey guys, I'm back today with a video, one that I'm kind of excited to do. I've kind of been on like a little hiatus the last couple weeks, only doing one video a week. Been really busy. School has been ramping up with like midterms, project due, more homework, and I've been a little busier myself doing some other things I've been working on, and also like with Guillermo Rigando versus Vasily Lomachenko coming up. That's kind of been the only fight that I've been like super excited to watch. So I haven't been thinking a lot about what kind of do for the channel or what kind of videos. So if you guys have any suggestions in the comments, let me know what you guys want to see, some stuff to break down. I'm more than happy to do it. I got one of my boys talking to me about trying to do some Emmanuel Augustus film study on him. He's a very interesting fighter. He's been saying to do the Floyd Mayweather fight, but I think that I would like to steer clear of anything that would make Floyd Mayweather maybe look bad, just because people are so invested in that guy's career for some reason. But anyway, if you guys have any suggestions, let me know in the comment section below. But we're going to get into today's video. It's Guillermo Rigando versus Robinson Castellanos. A pretty interesting fight. And it's really interesting where Gamboa has gone with his career. Obviously he's not the same guy that fought Crawford. I was thinking about doing the Crawford fight in particular. I was just watching it yesterday in some preparation and stuff, because to be honest, he fought a magnificent fight. He fought a great fight in that fight. And to be honest, in my opinion, he was working Crawford over. I think Crawford, I'm not saying like he got lucky or nothing, right? Obviously he set the shots up well. Like after he turned southpaw, he changed the fight and he was able to kind of pick those counters up really well. But Gamboa did some great things in that fight. But since that fight, after getting knocked out in fight of the year, like one of the best fights I've ever seen, it was just an amazing fight between two amazing fighters. Gamboa's kind of, gone downhill a little bit, and I don't think that it's because he's not a good fighter, right? I don't think he takes it as seriously, and that's probably the problem. But the reason that I'm interested in him at all is because he's got a fight coming up this weekend, which I had no idea about, against Jason Sosa, which is going to be a very, very fucking tough fight for him. Jason Sosa went 12 rounds and arguably won against Nicholas Walters. And a lot of people saw it as a clear dominant victory for Nicholas Walters. I didn't see it as clearly of a win for him. I don't really care who won the fight, but it was a great fight, and he showed that he could fight and compete with somebody who's as big a puncher as Nicholas Walters. And Nicholas Walters is no slouch in the punching power department. Decent speed, some decent technical ability. Nicholas Walters is a pretty good fighter, you guys, and Jason Sosa having gone 12 rounds with him, it makes me wonder how the fight this Saturday is going to play out between those two. I'm also thinking about doing some stuff on Shabransky. If anybody's interested in some film study on Shabransky and how he's going to fare against Sergey Kovalev, let me know. I've been heavily thinking about that too. But we're going to go ahead and get into this Gamboa fight versus Castellanos, and kind of talk about some of the flaws in Gamboa's game, especially when he's not taking the fight super seriously. Because if you watch back and you listen to anything that I talk about in my videos, if you go back and watch that Crawford fight, it was like a masterpiece for the first 4 rounds. He was fighting very, very, very well. Obviously there's some defensive stuff that you could work on, but it's not the conventional stuff that most people think. But anyway, he comes out, and if you look at the range right here, he's not going to land this jab, right? Look how far away he is, right? It's not a real jab. It's a probing jab, setting the tempo, right? Boom, just shooting it out there. He's not leaning into it. He's not trying to land it. And usually Gamboa goes to the body with his jabs anyway. So brings his guard up, as his opponent is moving around the ring, right? And his opponent has a really interesting rhythm too. I might talk about it. I don't know how many rounds I'm going to try and do. I'm going to try and jam pack them in, so I'll try to move a little quick. So I might not get to it, but Gamboa brings his gloves up to block that shot, and then again, another distance controlling jab, right? Just to control the distance, not to hit your opponent, not to stop your opponent, like not to punch them when they come into that range, but to let them know that this is the danger zone, right? Think before you come in here, and it slows them down. If you can keep, like, one of the most like underrated parts about boxing, right, is that when you're inside your opponent's head, when they're thinking about what you're going to be doing, and you constantly give them different looks, right? Slip in, bringing your hands up, down, changing levels. They got to constantly be evaluating what you're setting them up for, right? And Castellanos has to be thinking now, because this jab's coming out there, oh, he's getting used to this jab. He's getting me used to this jab. Why is he doing that? Oh, is that so that he can shoot that jab here, and then jump in and catch him with the jab, right? So he can set a jab up later? Is he setting it up? Is he getting, what is he doing with it? But it also, because you're in your opponent's head, you're able to stop them from thinking about what they want to do to you. So right here, Castellanos has, like I said, very interesting rhythm, right? So I guess I am going to talk about it. Moves, leans in, shoots a jab, right? All his weight on his front leg again, right? It's kind of like in that same rhythm. It's very common in boxing for fighters to have that rhythm. And he comes in, and Gamboa brings look at his right glove first off. He brings his right glove in front of his face in case he's going to catch the jab, right? And then he parries with the left jab, right? Defensive problems? I don't know, right? I do preach not to use both hands to do this, right? To parry a shot. But he's parrying not the same shot. One's a shot to the head, and the other one's a shot to the body, right? And it does wind up connecting, and then after he touches him, he goes to shoot a counter jab, right? So, interesting, right? So brings his gloves up, and notice this like slight little bend down right here. He ducks down to the right. What is he getting away from, right? Is this on his opponent's rhythm for a right hand, right? Is he trying to set up a shot over the top, or is he trying to get his opponent used to him ducking down so he can shoot jabs to the body? But anyway, he ducks down like that, and then his opponent shoots the jab, and what does he do? He ducks down and moves out, circles out to get away from a possible right hand. Again, same movement. Now he's ducking down, right? So we just saw him duck down a second ago. Now he's ducking down and shooting a jab. So we'll see what he's setting up here. Oh, I love this, right? So defensive responsibility, right? Gamboa gets a lot of shit for his defense, right? And it's mostly because he doesn't keep his hands up, right? The flaw in that is not that you have to keep your hands up all the time. There's a really interesting video. I was thinking about talking about it on my channel and talk about what's ruining fighters. It's this amateur style. But there's a very interesting video of Ryan Garcia doing some training, and he's training with some new coach. I know the guy's face, man, but I have no idea what the fuck his name is. And he's throwing these massive combos on the back. Like the guy's super fast. He hits super fucking hard. And then after every combo, the coach goes like, get your left hand back up. Bring your left hand back. You got to bring it back quicker. You got to, and that's not how fucking boxing works, you guys. That's not, like, sure, it's going to deter your opponent from throwing punches in that direction, right? Because you're not going to throw a punch at somebody's glove, usually. Sometimes you will to pin it against their head. But you want to control your opponent with your defense, and that's the difference, right? So it's okay that Gamboa doesn't have his hands up. It's okay that Ryan Garcia doesn't have his hands up, as long as he's making the proper adjustments post-punching to correct that kind of stuff. Not moving back in a straight line, controlling your opponent, whether that means clinching, whether that means getting your forearm on their collarbone or on their neck, not neck, usually you don't want it on their neck, or on their chest. Even just shooting your jab, and then when you move your arm out, right, rather than closing and pulling it back like an accordion, right, but folding it up in an accordion in a different style by pushing into it, right? So moving your body to smother your opponent, and getting your forearm onto your opponent's gloves so they can't punch back, Finding some way to control your opponent, whether it be his head so he can't punch back, or whether it be his arms, doing something that stops them from punching you back, right? And that's the most important part, and that's one of the foundations of defense that Gamboa completely lacks, and that's why he's so hittable. It's not because he has his hands down like most people think, even though it is sometimes a contributing factor, because if he had his hand up, maybe the glove that his opponent is throwing at him would walk into his glove, right? Does that make sense? Anyway, too much rant on that. But anyway, his opponent shoots that jab, right? And he slips it to the outside, and then immediately, so he shoots it, boom. Or he takes a step back, then he ducks to the left, or to his right, to get away from a possible right hand, and then he moves off, and look at how he's circling, right? This is something I love about him, right? Great fundamentals, right? He pivots in, but when he's circling his opponent, he doesn't just walk and stand straight up, right? Keep his head in the same line. This is head movement, right? This is having good head movement. Even though he's easy to hit, right? Because he doesn't use head movement when he punches all the time, but he's able to pivot and turn on the line like this and move off the line using head movement that keeps him from being hit while he's moving off the line, right? And as soon as his opponent attacks him, right, he moves off the line, so his opponent has to reset. You know, that's defense, you guys. Now, this is the first time that we get to see what Gamboa is really setting up with those probing jabs, with those quick jabs. He's a big fan of the lead left hook, a huge fan. I personally think that he has a better lead left hook than Mayweather, you know, personally. You know, I don't think that he sets it up as well, right? He's not as dedicated to setting it up as well. But because of the fact that he'll throw it when his opponent is throwing punches at him, like a lot of times in the Crawford fight, when Crawford would throw jabs at him, he would come in with a lead left hook and it would land just on the inside of Crawford's glove, right? Crawford's game plan for that, oh man, I don't want to spoil it because I'm thinking about breaking it down too, because it was an amazing, you know, Crawford was doing everything right and still getting clipped, still getting caught, you know. There were some things obviously he's not doing right for him to be getting hit as much as he was, but against a good fighter, you know, against a fighter who's setting his punches up well, you're going to get hit no matter how good your defense is. Against a fighter who's, you know, got good defense, you know, you're going to get hit no matter how good your defense is. You know, if you're fighting good fighters land punches, you know, whether you're a great fighter or not. But anyway, coming in with that left hook, right, and I love this about him, coming in with the left hook. You know, it doesn't land, right? But also that might also be a product of the fact that Gamboa is such a well-known quantity. Again, leading jab, right? Boom. Because there's so much tape on him, everyone knows how he fights, and because he's short, right? So his opponent comes in with the jab, he moves off, and look at how he moves off the line, right? Again, coming off, he's got his left glove up so he can catch a shot, right? And then rolls and moves back. And look at how he creates space when he does it too, right? Look at how close they are, right? Boom. And now they're so far away, right? Making his opponent reset his setups too. Now he's noticed that his opponent is kind of jabbing with him, right? Trying to counter his probe, which is great for him. That's like exactly what you want from your probe. You want your opponent to be reacting to it, putting themselves out of position. So it looks like, you know, for all intents and purposes, Gamboa is doing a great job in this first round. You know, I like how he's got this active guard, right? Shuffling his hands, dip to the left, dip to the right a little bit, bring his high guard up, and then comes in with the jab to the body, right? Give his opponent a number of different looks before committing to any offense. But one thing that I want to talk about is when he does shoot the jab, he does do a decent job of moving off the line. You know, people talk about his hands are low. Yeah, they're fucking low, right? But the problem is that he doesn't have any ability to control his opponent after he shoots this jab, right? He shoots the jab to the body, right? And he doesn't bring his lead hand back out to kind of catch a right hand, right? Or to bring his gloves up when he's to block, right? So you at least have to be able to do that if you're not going to be able to control your opponent. And this is one of the problems with being so short, right? Gamboa is a tiny guy. Is because if he doesn't want to be fighting on the inside, when he's leaping in like that with these shots, right? So look at how far away they are before he shoots. He does a good job of getting inside, but on his way out, because he's so short, he doesn't really have all those avenues of controlling your opponent, you know, and that might also be one of the reasons why he's so easy to hit. You know, maybe if he was also fighting guys who were 5'2", you know, it would be a different story. Like I know when he fought, man, I can't remember that guy's name. There was another short guy, a Hispanic guy, and he was just able to like fight defensively. And is it Oscar Larios? No, that guy's pretty tall. I don't know. I think the guy also fought Manny Pacquiao. But oh man, what a great fight that was. The highlights, I've watched highlights of that fight like 100 times. Oh god damn it. All right, moving on. 30 seconds into the round, 15 minutes into the fight. I got that backwards a little bit. Again, moving off the line, bringing his glove up, and then shooting that jab to the body, But so far it's getting a little repetitive, His opponent comes in with a 1-2. He brings up his gloves to block the second jab and then ducks the right hand. It winds up being a right hand to the body that kind of lands, kind of doesn't, but he does a good job of trying to get away from it, anticipating what he thinks it's going to be, especially because he keeps his gloves low, right? So he knows that the right hand over the top is coming over his low guard. So he ducks down and then, brings his gloves up to block the shot. I'm not sure if that left hook lands, actually. It does look like it lands, actually. Yeah, so he lands a left hook. Again, if he has his gloves up, right, that's important. And this is an instance where when he's defending, he wants to have his gloves up or his hands up. But after punching, you don't want to have your hands up or bring your hands back. You're not going to be able to do that faster than your opponent can punch you in the face. But in situations where you're purely being defensive, being able to block punches and bring your gloves up is very important. And we do get to see a little of the clinks or the chinks in his armor when he's not getting to be that offensive tool that he likes to be. Again, his opponent has that same rhythm, right? And steps in off of the lead foot. And it's really interesting, too, because stepping with your jab has become such a prevalent thing in boxing recently, It hasn't always been that common. So he shoots the jab over there, and then he goes for a right hand to the body. Some decent countering stuff. I don't know if he blocks that shot, but almost catches him with the left hook. And again, look at this, right? Throws that right hand, and he's not able to get that right hand back before the left hand comes. He does do a good job of, his opponent does do a good job of shooting that right hand and then pivoting and turning away from a possible counter right hand and pulling his weight back. But he's not able to get his glove back before, right? And that's very common. It's not easy to do. Now here we see the first dividend that Gamboa has for reading his opponent and getting the timing of his opponent, because his opponent has that rhythm, right? He's shooting in on the jab now, stepping with it. But this time Gamboa, rather than moving back like he's made his opponent accustomed to, he's changing up the pattern, slipping it on the inside and landing a great body shot right there. Misses those two shots, and boom, lands a big overhand right. But now, I'm not a big fan of long, drawn-out combinations like this, right? I think you should throw maybe a 2-piece, maybe a 3-piece combination, right? But you want to get back to a defensive posture where you're not in danger as fast as possible. And as you see, his opponent even tries to control his head, right? And still winds up eating that body shot, that faux right hand right there. And then he misses over the top with this left hand, but he eats a body shot, a left hand to the body right there, because he's not controlling his opponent. And then he eats that right hand to the body too, right? Boom. And then boom. Granted, Gamboa's landing bigger shots, and for all intents and purposes, he's probably the bigger puncher. But you don't ever want to be trading punches with your opponent, right? So the exchange would be so much different. Boom, boom. If instead of continuing the combination from here, right after he misses that left hook, taking his forearm and closing the distance while keeping his right hand to his chest and smothering his opponent so he can't land this body shot. Granted, he does land the bigger punch, right? But that's not the important part of the factor. And again, just to stress this, right? His opponent throws that left hook to the body, right? And immediately Gamboa lands that right hand over the top. But look at Castallanos' left hand. After he lands it, he's trying to bring it up, right? But you're just never going to be able to bring your glove up faster than your opponent can counter you, if that's their intention, is to counter you. You're just never going to, so very rarely are you going to be able to do it, that you need to be looking at ways to control your opponent. Even Castellanos could have controlled his opponent. After landing that left hook, right, he could have stepped forward and smothered Gamboa so he didn't eat that right hand, right, or duck his head, right? But anyway, not a lot of defensive responsibility from Gamboa. Rather than taking the opportunity, right, we're not going to watch it again. I guess we will. Rather than taking the opportunity to control his opponent and stay safe, he takes the opportunity to land another punch. And for Gamboa, that might be a decent strategy because he's, for all intents and purposes, the bigger puncher. Trading punches with your opponent, I guess it's fine. But also, he hasn't shown the greatest chin, so finding a way to mitigate the damage that he can take while still coming out ahead in engagements is going to be very advantageous for him, especially as the fight goes on. If he's ahead on the scorecards, his opponent's going to be taking less opportunities to set his punches up because they know they're behind. Anyway, shooting the jab again, right? Boom, and Gamboa uses defensive responsibility and ducks away from a possible right hand. Probing jab, So he steps in right at the wrong time, and his opponent catches him with the jab. Not a big punch, right? Right as he's looking to set up his own shot. And I wonder if his opponent read that right, and just timed him perfectly. It could be that was the case. Gamboa does like to probe first and then walk in on the shot. So maybe his opponent's timing him right here. That's why it's such a clean shot. It just totally disrupts his rhythm, right? What a messy exchange. And to be honest, when I watched the fight live, that was immediately after this engagement. This is when I thought, oh God, Gamboa's in trouble. But so eats that shot. He does land the body shot, right? And his opponent, the reason this is so effective for his opponent is after he lands that body shot, his opponent catches him, catches him with a little left hook right here, and then immediately moves off the line and catches him with another left hook. Look at how wide Gamboa winds up being after this, right? Boom. He's trying to move as well and change angles, right? And he kind of beats him to the line, even though... but his opponent is throwing that shot while he's pivoting, right? So that's why he's able to catch him, even though Gamboa lands it on the line first, right? And look at this beautiful punch technique from his opponent. You got to highlight this. He lands that left hook, and look at how he brings all his weight back to his right leg and gets away from the counter from Gamboa. Beautiful boxing. And then he's able to come back with that right hand too, off of it, and probably get power into it, even though it doesn't land, and then move all his weight to his left leg, right? And then pivot on him. And look at the defense from his opponent. To be honest, it's way better than Gamboa's. Boom, he misses that shot, and then he turns on him, and look at how he gets his weight onto Gamboa so he can pivot and turn, right? Look at where his weight is. Boom. And now his weight's here, and he's turning in the air, using Gamboa as kind of like a counterbalance, and that's exactly what you want to do after you miss a shot, or even if you land a shot, so that your opponent can't counter. And now Gamboa's, off balance, right? And he has to kind of hold, otherwise he's going to be out of position because his opponent's using him to turn, creating a positional advantage. And Gamboa does the right thing by clinching him. Again, so interesting, right? Shoots the jab, and then the very next time goes to the body, right? Now this kind of highlights the last engagement, right? How Gamboa used that probing jab first, his opponent's not reacting, and then he went in for the right hand to the body, but his opponent countered him. He timed him really well. And this goes in line with showing that Castallanos probably is timing him, and that probably is what Gamboa is doing. Oh, and he breaks rhythm right there, so maybe that's not the case, right? But you see Castallanos coming in, ducking down to the right, ducking down to the left, trying to step forward, and maybe that throws Gamboa off, right? Because we just saw it a second ago, right? Probing jab, jab to the body. Probing jab, and then Castellanos starts weaving, right? And then Gamboa doesn't feel comfortable shooting his punch. Ooh. Now, Gamboa doesn't set his shot up, and he eats a right hand. Now, this is why it's important to feint and probe your opponent, And this is a huge problem for modern-day boxers. They don't use enough head movement. They don't use enough, of an active guard, feinting, probing. A lot of great fighters in this day and age, fighters like Errol Spence, right? This is a huge problem that Errol Spence has. He uses only basically one probe or one feint before committing to his offense. That's why Kell Brook had so much success against him. And here you see Gamboa not using any feints or any probes, and even though he's, for all intents and purposes, probably the faster fighter, he's not the Gamboa of old, but easily getting walked into a counter right hand, right, from like a very lesser fighter, like an average Joe kind of boxer. Again, coming in with that left hook, that leading left hook. And it's a little bit interesting that this punch comes nowhere near landing because of the fact that he's been setting it up with the jab, right? The jab to the body so many times. He hasn't thrown very many jabs to the head at all, right? But he doesn't even come close to landing that lead left hook in spite of the fact that he has so many jabs to kind of set it up, right? Like if his opponent was reading that as a jab to the body and tried to counter with a right hand, he could have gotten, super wrecked with that shot. And then immediately the jab to the body and his opponent tries to counter. But again, when he does that jab to the body, there's no control, right? So sure, Gamboa could be keeping his right hand up right here, right? And maybe he had lightning fast reflexes to bring his left hand back, right? But look at how close that shot still comes, right? It's because he's not able to control him with the jab to the body, right? If he shot that jab and then he closed the distance again, like I said, do anything but pull straight back, right? And you still don't have to keep your hands up. That's not the important part of it. But shooting the jab, his opponent comes in, and look at how this is exactly what I'm talking about right here. So his opponent shoots this right hand and then folds in on him so he can't counter him, right? Gamboa can't counter him because he's closing the distance, right? That's exactly what Gamboa should be doing after he shoots that jab to the body, right? Or shooting the jab to the body, right? And then moving his head to the outside, right? To get away from a counter right hand or even the left hook, right? And that could counter him, that could get him, just doing anything to be defensively responsible, right? Shoot the jab to the body and then pivot out, But as Gamboa, as he shoots that jab or that right hand, he closes the distance, and Gamboa has no recourse but to tie him up because he's too close to be punched, right? And his opponent's able to throw punches while he's clinching. That's exactly what you want to be doing. Not a bad movement right there. His opponent shoots the jab, he ducks the right hand, and then comes back with the counter jab. So Gamboa very technically skilled, right? He knows the ins and outs of a boxing ring, but nobody's ever taught him how to defend himself, and that's one of the problems with being like such a prolific amateur fighter is that you're not allowed to do that shit in the amateurs. You're not allowed to control your opponent. You're not allowed to put your arms around them and push them around the ring and really be physical with them. And that's also another problem with shitty-ass referees who come from the amateurs and start refereeing pro fights with the same rule set, But anyway, so Gamboa controlling the distance, controlling him, and just walks him into this beautiful right hand right here because his opponent showed that he's looking to counter that jab, right? Come back and counter him. He's able to walk him into this shot. So some great probing right here from Gamboa, showing that he's very technically skilled, right? Understanding this, even though, his lack of defense really gets in the way of him being a great fighter. And again, lands this right hand. Well, let's break it down real quick. So lands the right hand, boom, and then pivots, turns off the line, which is beautiful, misses the left hook, kind of controls his head, but allows him to come up after that left hook miss. And look at how close his opponent's right hand, like right hook, is to Gamboa's chin. Look at how close that is. And that's what happens when you throw that left hook and it goes over your opponent's head and you don't control them with your forearm, is they're able to bring their head up and come back with a huge punch like that, right? And if that would have caught Gamboa, it would have knocked him out. Like, point blank, it would have been at least a knockdown. And we've seen that time and time again in Gamboa's career. And this is a great fight to be doing this breakdown of because you really get to see why so many of those fighters have that kind of dirty style after they miss a punch like that, right? Holding their opponent's head down is because they don't want to get hit by shots like that. Even though it doesn't land right here, right? But that's not the point. His opponent trying to set his shots up, leaning forward, probing, and Gamboa not having any of it. Again, very predictable now. Boom. He starts changing levels, and his opponent immediately knows it's going to be a jab to the body. Look at how close those hooks come, you know. He's got to find, you know, a different way to set his shots up, you know, because it's very predictable. It's getting into that Errol Spence territory where even though he's quote-unquote doing it right, because it's doing it right has been figured out, it's not doing anything productive, you know, except for putting him in danger. So again, this is what happens when you don't set your punches up. You get walked into big shots, you know. Is Gamboa a counterpuncher? Right? Not really, but he's very easily able to walk his opponent into these shots. Not setting his shots up there, not setting those shots. Ooh. Now again, this is such an interesting exchange, you know, because I'm not sure who's playing who, right? So we've seen a few times Gamboa using his jab, right? He would probe, right? Whoop. And then his opponent would follow it back with the jab, and Gamboa immediately sees that his opponent kind of comes forward, right? Comes forward to counter it, and then he ducks down knowing that the right hand is coming, pulls away from it, and catches him with his own right hand, you know. Like a brilliant exchange in boxing, you know. And like, who is this guy? Like Robinson Castellanos. Did I call him Robertson? Fuck, I might have. Robinson Castellanos, you know. Who is this guy, right? That's a great setup, you know. His opponent is baiting the counter, so he baits the counter to the counter and catches Gamboa with a great shot, you know. And then the follow-up hook doesn't land because Gamboa has defensive responsibility, boom, and rolls away from the shot, you know. But what a great exchange. Again, not really setting it up, you know, kind of catching him off rhythm or off timing. Gamboa not countering here, right? Not controlling the space. His opponent feels okay to come in. And then there it is, that check left hook, right? His opponent comes to jab at him. Boom. And, you know, it's kind of a gloving shot. You know, he hits him with the inside of his forearm. But I don't doubt that you don't want to get hit by that. But again, this is why you have to set your shots up. And granted, while his opponent's glove is not where it exactly needs to be, right? It's not wildly out of position, you know. A little bit, you know, as soon as he shoots it, it's pretty open. But he tries to get it there in time, but kind of gets clobbered, you know. But again, that's why you need to set your shots up. You need to feint, you need to probe, you need to get your opponent thinking you're going to do something else at the very least. Shoots the jab, boom, ducks down away from the shot on the right. And look at how he does this, right? Boom. And he puts all his weight on his right leg, right? All his weight is on his right leg right now, but he's not bending down, right? He's ducking, right? Boom. But he's bending, right? It's not like Erickson Lubin where he just folds at his waist, right? He's folding at his hip, right? So he's able to like spring back with the shot or do some more counters. Again, his opponent not setting his shots up, almost eating a counter again. You know, kind of sloppy. You know, that leading left hook is not really working for him, right? He does get that counter shot in there, but, you know, interesting round. Why is it so far into that round? Okay. But, you know, Gamboa not showing that he knows how to control his opponents, right? And that's really a big problem for him. And that was one of the problems against Crawford, is Crawford was countering him, and he didn't know how to stop the counters. You know, he was doing a decent job of baiting them and feinting and probing and stuff, but after those kind of tactics, you know, wore out a little bit and he had to kind of vary stuff in his fight, he wasn't able to control Crawford to stop him from countering. And you're seeing like the same kind of problems, you know, that big left hook that his opponent landed after he tried to counter with the right hand was the same scene. But anyway, coming in with the jab, you know, and now he's not. Oh, okay, spoke too soon. Jab to the body, boom, and then comes up with this left hook. It doesn't look like it lands, right? But interesting, right? So he goes for the jab to the body, thinking his opponent's going to counter him with the right hand, comes up with the left hook. You know, it doesn't look like it lands super cleanly or like a hard shot, but it's good that he's making adjustments, while he's doing this. Again, defensive responsibility. His opponent shoots the jab, immediately ducks down. So Gamboa's a good fighter, you guys. Shoots the jab, the 1-2. His opponent's not reacting to it anymore with the counters. Oh my goodness. And this is the kind of shit, like, everyone wants to see this in boxing, right? Let's go ahead and put this in slow-mo. Everyone wants to see this in boxing, right? Comes in with this crazy combination. He ducks the left hook, right? But Gamboa doesn't control him, right? So from this position, right, he should just immediately take his right leg and pivot it around his opponent's left leg, just like that. Actually, yeah, just like that. But because they start, because Gamboa puts his left glove around his body, it stops him from being able to really set and turn into his shots. That's exactly where he doesn't want his hand. He wants his hand across his own chest, right? Across his own chest and leaning on his opponent as he turns, right? But because he doesn't do that, his opponent's able to punch with him after turning angles, because he kind of turns angles too, right? And then throws that right hand. And look at how they're both so close to landing these shots, They're on the same rhythm. Nothing really landing, but both of them in, like, terrible danger, because they're not controlling, they're not setting up. It's just wild exchanges. Fun, but I don't know. Very interesting. I wonder what made him throw that right uppercut. I guess he, thinking when he flashes that lead hand, because Gamboa does always bring his head down like that, that was a pretty decent job from him, almost walking Gamboa into that shot, picking up on that rhythm that Gamboa has shown to duck the right hand. Interesting. I wonder, how does he know that this is a right hand, right? I wonder, like, if at a different angle it would be easier to tell, because Gamboa has thrown very few lead right hands. And they've all been to the body so far. So his opponent doing a good job, keeping a good eye on Gamboa. Oh, and a good counter jab from his opponent on that probe. Again, same repetitive motion, ducking down. That's what almost walked him into that right uppercut. I wonder if that'll play a factor into the later in the fight. Lead left hook, and does it land? Shooting that jab. And now because Gamboa's been leading with the jab a little more in this round, right? Shooting that jab right there, and then coming with the lead hook, right? It's had a little more effect. I don't think Gamboa was thinking that lead left hook would even land, and he'd just land that too after, because of the way that his opponent gets away from that lead left hook. Again, no setup to the jab, right? The jab to the body, and eats a right hand because his opponent just takes a small step back and then walks him into it. Again, right, shooting the jab, he needs to take an angle off, right? So after he shoots the jab to the body, he needs to pivot to his right, or slip the shot and move his head to the other side. Boom, boom, but just kind of gets walked into a shot. Boom, ducks. I'm wondering if his opponent's going to start catching him with that. Oh, man, nice. And it lands on the shoulder, right? But he knows that it's coming, right? He knows that it's coming because his opponent's been countering his jabs. Why is his opponent not setting up his shots, walking into that right hand again, and then a left hook? Again, sorry. Shoots that shot, his opponent comes in, and he could have smothered him here, right? He could have got all the way up into his chest, right, and gotten on the inside of his arm after that jab missed, right? But not controlling him. And then Gamboa not controlling him when he's throwing these shots. And granted, his opponent's not in as good a position to counter, right? So maybe it's good for him because he's faster or whatever. But, very dangerous to throw punches like that with your opponent. Good active guard. Ugh. But not really setting the shots up, right? Very, very exciting, very fun fight, but not a lot of setup to any of the stuff that's going on. Shooting the jab, almost getting countered. Doing a good job of moving off the line, which stops his opponent's counter right here from landing. A 1-2. And look at how easy this is, right? So he shoots the jab, right? And then boom, moves his head to the other side, and that's going to stop him from eating counters from his opponent, right? That's something that he could incorporate even with his jab to the body, so he doesn't get hit with the cross to the right, the right hand cross to the head. But again, not really setting his shots up. I'm not sure if he's like complacent and he's just like, okay, I got this in the bag. Ooh, oh man. So his opponent shoots that jab again, almost walking him into this right uppercut. The same thing that the Erickson Lubin, right? Oh man. And because Gamboa stays there, doesn't control him, keeps his hands to himself, he gets kind of clobbered with this left hook while he's throwing his own punch, right? Again, so from this position, right, after his opponent throws that 1-2, he needs to be pivoting out, right? He puts all his weight on his right leg. He needs to turn out to that right side, right? But he comes straight up and gets clobbered with that shot, And that's like a defensive problem that doesn't have nearly as much to do with keeping your hands up as it does with moving off the line. Again, not setting his shots up, winging that shot, eating a counter. Does a good job of moving off the line that time, So I wonder, like, why he does and why he doesn't do it sometimes. If it's a read on it, maybe he had that one guy that was really great at landing counters in the gym, so he only avoids counter A. Interesting. So he leans in like he's going to throw a jab to the body, right? His opponent comes with an overhand right instead. Misses, not because Gamboa has defense, right? Obviously, he's not using any intelligent defense there, right? And then coming back with counters. Very dangerous style of offense right there. Oh, man. So, has Gamboa been countering jabs of his opponents, right? Boom, jab, 1-2, and then lands that right hand over the top, while he's looking to throw that left hook. And this is really interesting because this has been a long round. It's been 40 minutes, right? But I don't know if I've seen Gamboa countering the jab, right? Countering his opponent's jab. So I'm not sure if he knew that was going to happen, right? Because every other time that he's thrown a 1-2, right? Gamboa has ducked down, right? So why does he go over the top with the right hand this time? Maybe he was expecting the Gamboa's other counter, the counter right hand over the top. That could be it, right? He was expecting the counter over the hand, overhand right, and then kind of walk him into that right hand. I could see that. And then he does do it right there. Like, I don't know what's going on in this exchange, to be honest, right? Just coming in, I don't know. It's fun to watch, right? But not a lot of, like, technique or setup right there. Just kind of walking in. I don't know why his opponent's just winging this right hand. And Gamboa hits him in the back of the head right there. But very sloppy boxing kind of from both of them right here. Gamboa, I don't get it. He's gotten countered to the body or countered to the head so many times off of this jab to the body. I'm not sure why he's even still throwing it. Again, his opponent shoots the jab. He ducks under the right hand, right? Shit, I missed that. Nothing. You know, an interesting round, right? I'm not going to do another round. This video is like already really long, but it's really interesting to see where, you know, who Gamboa is as a fighter, you know, and he's like my Zab Judah, right? I will never miss a Yuriorkis Gamboa fight. It's never going to be boring, right? Zab Judah fight, never going to be boring. But there's a lot of, while you do get to see flashes of like some brilliance in his game, right? Setting traps and setting counters, walking his opponent into counters. He's got great reflexes. There are a lot of flaws in his game too, and a lot of it, you know, people say, oh, that's from not keeping your hands up, right? It's because he doesn't know how to control his opponent. You know, the defensive criteria for being an A-level fighter or a 4 or a 5-star fighter is being able to control your opponent when you're out of position or when they're punching at you, right? So after you throw a punch, being able to control your opponent to stop them from landing punches, not relying on your ability, but relying on hindering your opponent's ability to land punches, right? And he lacks all of that. You know, very, very, very few times does he ever get into a position in which he's controlling his opponent for defense. And, you know, sometimes he has really great offense, you know. Unfortunately, like, he has that very common trap that's just so prevalent in boxing right now that Mayweather has popularized. The jab to the body and the quick step jab, and then you go into a lead left hook. But that's because that's so much of his offense. As soon as the opponent is able to take it away from him, he winds up being in kind of a rough spot for setting up his punches, you know. And it's interesting because in the Crawford fight, he didn't have nearly as many problems landing punches against Crawford as he does against this guy. You know, is he not taking the fight serious? Is he, you know, having weight issues? Is he just older? Maybe it's because of ring rust, right? He hasn't been training as much or sparring as much, or, you know, all that shit that could be hindering him from being, you know, the great fighter that he could be, you know. But not setting his punches up, you know, which is really interesting. And that's another one of the reasons why a fighter like this can have so many problems in the ring. It's not because he's not a very, very talented fighter, a very, very good fighter. It's just that he just doesn't know how to set his punches up as well as, I'll say, like a fighter like Vasily Lomachenko, who I think would put on a clinic. You know, and it's going to be interesting this weekend to see him fight Jason Sosa, because that motherfucker is game. He is a game fighter. Like, he went all 12 with no, he didn't. He did get stopped, right? 10 rounds or 11 rounds? I'm not sure. Maybe he made all 12. But he went 12 with Walters, and he went a lot of rounds with Vasily Lomachenko, who was putting a clinic on him, you know? So Jason Sosa giving up in a fight against Gamboa is just not going to happen, you know. And I wonder how many of these kinds of flaws he's going to be able to see in his technique. You know, controlling his opponents. You know, it makes me think if Jason Sosa likes to counter, that counters are going to be very effective against him as soon as he can find his timing and his rhythm, or pick out one little pattern. You know, but Gamboa can always punch, you know, and that's like the kind of wild card for him, is that he's always going to be a great puncher. Anyway, I might do some more rounds of this fight. Gamboa's, you know, he's one of my favorite fighters. Again, like I said, I'll never miss his fights. But I might also just do some on Walters and Sosa for the comparison, and then talk about how I like a prediction for the fight. Even though it's only a couple rounds, you know, maybe I'll do a couple more rounds. I'm not sure. Anyway, thanks, guys.